Welcome everybody, Talia is here and we are back at the Healing a Mess interview series, and today I have Dr. Keesha yours with me. Dr. Keesha is an integrative medicine expert, doctor of sexology, family practice, ARNP, psychotherapist, herbalist, is a board certified in functional medicine and is the founder and medical director of the Academy of Integrative Medicine Health Coach Certification Program. Dr. Keesha has been in the medical field for over 30 years. After conducting the Healing Unresolved Trauma, HURT, study in 2013, she developed the HURT model for understanding how past childhood trauma impacts adult health. This led to the creation of online programs for patients to heal their own trauma and the Mystic Medicine Deep Immersion Healing Retreats that she leads. Dr. Keesha is a popular speaker and the best-selling author of Solving the Autoimmune Puzzle, The Woman's Guide to Reclaiming Emotional Freedom and Vibrant Health, the Quick and Easy Autoimmune Paleo Cookbook, Anti-Inflammatory Recipes with 7 Ingredients or Less for Busy People, and Your Libido Story, a workbook for women who want to find, fix, and free their sexual desire. Very impressive. Very nice to have you here with me, Dr. Keesha. How are you today?
I'm delighted to be here and so happy to be talking to people who are excited about taking responsibility for their health and reversing their illness.
Yes, that's what this little conference interview series is all about. Mm-hmm. So I want to, I don't know if a lot of our viewers here know you. Can you share with us your personal story? I know you have a very powerful story that actually brought you into doing the amazing work that you do today.
Sure. I'm 55. Next month, I'll be 56, actually. And when I was in my early 30s, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, so another autoimmune disease. Prior to that time, I had been an ICU nurse for about 10 years. So I was only in the Western medical paradigm and really kind of a high adrenaline junkie. I used to like to skydive and I was a marathon runner and I loved the intensive care unit. I was just kind of like this driven personality. And when I got sick, when I was diagnosed, it was like a lot of my patients say, which is not true actually, but it's felt like all of a sudden I'm ill where before I was fine. And that's how I experienced it too. One morning I was, the day before I'd been getting ready for a marathon. The next day I woke up and I had gained 10 pounds of puffiness all over my body. My joints were swollen and inflamed. And it was like, my friends called me the Energizer Bunny, like someone had taken the batteries out of the Energizer Bunny and I was just flattened. And so I got in to see a doctor and she asked me in the course of her history taking if I had any family history of autoimmunity. And I said, yeah, I think my grandfather had rheumatoid arthritis. Now, I was telling this story this year and it struck me that my grandfather who had RA, had been in a wheelchair, died at the age that I am right now. And when I compare where I am today with where I was at that period of time, I'm astonished, like he didn't have any of this information. And I was able to reverse my autoimmunity within 6 months in spite of my doctor. So my doctor had said, okay, well, it's genetic. So here, close the book, put it on the shelf. You've drawn the short end of the genetic lotto straw, right? And here are 2 prescriptions, one for methotrexate and one for a really strong anti-inflammatory drug. And I just remember saying, well, hang on. Is there anything else? And I'm very, very disciplined. I make all my own food, that. She said, no, I'm afraid this is just genetic. And when you get worse, come back and we'll change your meds. It wasn't if you get worse, when you get worse, right? So I walked out of there knowing full well, because of what I did for a living, what the side effect profile was for both of these meds and not wanting to do it. And I was on my way home and I was thinking there has to be a different way. There has to be. And so I went into, and at this time it was a dial-up modem on my computer and I had to ask Jeeves instead of Google. Most of you have probably never even heard of Ask Jeeves, but that was the search engine at the time. And so I went in and I asked, is there anything, what we would call alternative medicine, right? Alternative to drugs. And when I went in, I found some in PubMed, some articles that into yoga being really good for people with autoimmune disease. So the next morning, I actually ran 5 miles to a yoga class and did my very first yoga class. It was an hour and a half power vinyasa. I had no idea what yoga was. I didn't know where I should begin. Did this class. And in the process, my teachers, I'm just like wiped out on my mat in Shavasana, like, oh, a sweat puddle, right? Going, what just hit me? And the teacher had said something, this one word, Ayurveda. And he mentioned enough about it that I got interested, and I went home again and I looked it up. And Ayurveda is the sister science of yoga. It's the medical arm of the Vedas. And I remember reading stuff that just sat me back in my chair where I went, oh, I've never even contemplated this before. Things like we're not all the same. We have different constitutions, mentally, spiritually, physically, emotionally. And that we actually need to be fed and watered and taken for walks differently than each of us, right? Each other. And so this idea that one medication will behave the same way in every person has long been known not to work. It's why we have so many lawsuits. And the same with diets, right? There's no one way of reversing illness. Ayurveda gave me a glimpse into, oh, these are imbalances inside of your own constitution. And then this is just feedback from your body saying what you're doing is not working. And I remember really getting present to that and thinking, oh, that's so different than the way I was trained. And then another thing that really rocked me off my heels was I read that Ayurvedic medicine says the autoimmune disease is undigested anger. And I remember thinking, but I'm not an angry person, and kind of getting a little pissy about it. And I remember thinking, well, maybe that's the problem. Like maybe that's one of the reasons that I'm ill right now is that I don't recognize myself when I'm angry. I don't recognize anger. I don't allow it. I don't express it well. I don't have a good relationship to it. And so I started working on that thought process. And so what happened was I started really diving in and got certified as a yoga teacher, learned how to meditate. And through the process over the next few weeks, as I learned how to meditate, I started really examining the word autoimmune. And I thought, gosh, autoimmune means I'm killing myself, literally committing suicide in a societally acceptable manner. When did I first want to die? Because I don't want to die right now. And that was a really important question, not how do I get out of my suffering as quickly as possible, but what is it here to tell me? What's happening right now in my cellular structure that maybe I brought on somehow? Not to say this is all your fault. So I went back and I followed this little, I call it the golden breadcrumb trail in my memory. And I started looking for places where I had wanted to die. And I got back to this little 10-year-old girl version of myself who was being sexually abused by the vice principal of my elementary school. And I was one of 2 white girls in an all-black school. And he was telling me it was because I was white trash and a bad kid. And that this is why it was happening to me. So I remember thinking, okay, we had just moved to the United States from Japan. And so it felt like I was very unsafe in my skin, which a lot of people of color today will listen to me and say, yeah, we've been feeling like that our whole lives, and that this is our reality. It happened to be mine in Japan. And then when I got here as a child, and I remember thinking, okay, there's nothing I can do about this. So I need to really be perfect. So what would happen is when I get called to the principal's office, every once in a while, the little intercom in the corner of my classroom would go off and it would call me. And as soon as it would crackle to life, like for the Pledge of Allegiance every morning, for the secretary to make announcements, I'd go straight into that fight, flight, freeze, just freeze like panicked rabbit, because it was Pavlovian at that point, right? So what the meaning was I created around that, and this is what the hurt model does, it kind of unpacks not your trauma so much, and everybody's had trauma, but actually what the meaning was that you created around it. So people are always afraid of healing their trauma because they're afraid they're going to have to open up cans of worms that they stuck in the closet and, put things on top of. But actually, when I started investigating this, I thought, oh, so what I made up with my undeveloped child's mind, because our brain's not fully developed till we're 26. So everything that we think, feel, believe is very self-centric when we're children. We're trying to figure out how to be big people, right? But we're little people. and we're being told by the big people how to do it. And so the meaning that I created around that particular trauma was that people in authority are not safe. And then the belief structure that came from that was I really have to be watchful around people in authority, because I tried to tell teachers and no one would, like, get back and play, and then the behavior, this is the really important one, right? The behavior that I created as an adaptive strategy to that meaning and that belief was to be a perfectionist. Because if I'm a bad kid and I can't do anything about what's going on with like how I look, then I'm going to be as perfect as possible, right? And so from that day, 10 years old, and we know that autoimmunity takes anywhere from 10 to 30 years to develop. It's not all of a sudden. From that day at 10 years old, all the way to 30, it's 20 years. It's like I had a turkey timer in me. Ping, you're done, right? And so my cells actually had upregulated genetics that I had for RA over that period of time inside this cauldron of alchemic formula of perfectionism and resentment and anger that was never digested, and frustration about something I have no control over. And so I was driving myself for my adult life from 20 to 30 with marathons and being the best at everything I could do, 4.0 student. Like I was always driving myself. So when I got sick, it became this really amazing opportunity to say, oh, that's the autoimmune component. That's why I'm killing myself. I actually did want to die at the age of 10. I wanted off this planet real bad. I couldn't understand anything that was happening to me. I didn't understand how to get away from it. No one that I talked to, I didn't know the right words to use. And so I saw her and I thought, oh, you sweetheart, you did want out. Okay, I get it. I see you, right? So then I did a ton of trauma work around that. And within 6 months, my RA was completely reversed. And I always say it's not cured, even though it hasn't been around for 25 years, no autoimmunity for 25 years. It's there if in my genes, if I were to go back to that way of being with myself, right? Not giving myself permission to express, I had this like protective chameleon thing that I would do to try and blend in as much as I could. And so not speaking out, like all these different things, advocating for myself and then driving myself in these perfectionist ways. So I always say that people with autoimmunity have 4 Ps always, all of them. Perfectionism, whether they recognize it or not, people pleasing, holding on to the poison of past pain. And then the last one in the Ayurvedic spectrum is a pitta dosha that's primary. And so that's like the fire. They're the fiery people. They're super intelligent. They're very driven, right? And yeah, that can get out of balance like a wildfire, which creates inflammation and whatever target tissue your genetics have matched up with you. So that was my journey with this. And I find it very exciting to know that we actually have that kind of power to be able to let ourselves know that, oh yeah, you are safe. It's okay, right? If you're willing to do the processing.
Yeah, that's really powerful, I think, and very important work, because when you think of kids, I mean, and I'm sorry you went through something like that. And unfortunately, so many girls and women go through this experience. But the truth is that kids, with the brain that we have as kids, even if when we go through something that is not as horrible, when the kids perceive it, the meaning that we give it in that age, it could seem to be something really awful.
That's what I always write and teach is everybody has trauma. And you can think about it as capital T trauma or adverse childhood experiences from the ACEs study, which are like the 10, sexual, psychologically, emotional, physical, domestic violence, abuse, neglect, abandonment, having a parent that's addicted to a substance or mentally ill, or watching a mother be violated, having caregivers incarcerated or dead or divorced. Like all of those things are those capital T traumas that when I was doing my research and in the HURT study to find out why the ACEs study came up with what it did, I found this really interesting study done by a group named Mole and researchers. And what they did is they looked at fMRI scans of brains of people that had reported on a perceived stress index themselves as being stressed. And so what they discovered is the same brain architectural changes that happen with post-traumatic stress disorder from those capital T traumas are happening in people that report themselves as overwhelmed. So it's the same exact stuff. Your prefrontal cortex shrinks in volume and your amygdala, especially the right side, grows in volume. In other words, the part of you that's always looking to make sure that everything's okay. And so, the thing of it is that our society, our culture that we're marinating in from the time we're born actually promotes a productivity orientation, right? So everybody's stressed and overwhelmed for various reasons. And that actually is registered as trauma by this system. And so I found that quite fascinating. Everybody has trauma and everyone always wants to compare it to everyone else's. Oh, well, when they listen to my story and, I know this makes people's hackles rise when I say this, but I wouldn't change it for anything. Like it's one of those things that I know that I was designed to have when I came in to learn the things that I am meant to do today, So children have their traumas and then their adulthood is meant to begin to glean the wisdom from those traumas so that then you become an elder, right? And that wise elder is meant to help the generation before as they're going through their stuff. And that's the way it's supposed to happen. We're kind of disconnected now in our generation, so we're not doing that very well. But the fact of the matter is that sexual abuse is one of the best things that happened to me, because had I not, right, been able to have that rheumatoid arthritis and that, I would not have evolved my consciousness in the places that I am today, which is kind of an interesting way of thinking about it. And that's not saying that, oh, your trauma is your gift if you're not ready to hear that. But there are points, like everyone that I used to do a lot of hospice and I'm a conscious dying doula. And one of the things that most people get to when they have a terminal illness is this place where they say, oh, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me, because of the amount of real, true, authentic growth that happens in a very compressed period of time with something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I have myself, since my diagnosis, experienced a lot of what you're sharing right now. So I know that it's possible. I know that it's real. One day could be real for everybody. And I don't want anybody to hear it as like, that's what you're supposed to feel right now, or that's where you want to be right now, because we all have our times.
And you can't hop over to that without doing the other parts first. Like that's called spiritual bypass. So you actually have to go through the progression and the process of digesting all of it. Really, truly. Can't eat an apple and then bypass the whole part that happens within your digestive tract, where you get rid of what you don't need and you keep what you do need, and it energizes you, creates new cells for you. That's actually emotionally, mentally, and spiritually what happens to us too. And we have to go through the digestive process the same as we would with the food that we eat. And that's what's kind of fascinating. People want to shortcut that, but you cannot. You cannot.
So assuming that everybody had trauma based on the type of traumas that we talk about, or pain from the past, or disappointment in whatever way people, whatever they made up out of it. The past is the past. The past cannot change. It will not change. How does one, with the work that you have experienced, that have been working, how do they clear it so they can, clear the body as well, and the emotions and mind?
Yeah, it's a really beautiful question. And I have a whole program I call Healing Trauma Through the Chakra System. It's got 9 modules and it takes people through this. And one of the things I tell people to do first and foremost is, in quantum physics, we have this understanding now, scientists have shared with us, that I think about it as like a cell of time is your life. You can think about this egg that is your life. And time's not as linear as we want to think about it, right? Quantum physics has shown us this. So that the parts of you that are young, that you've already lived through, are in here with you. You have access to them. But also your older, wiser self that you have access to. And all of that is together. And so what I'll often tell people to do is like print out a picture of yourself from when you were little, right? I keep this by my computer all the time. Isn't she adorable? And I just keep that there to remind me that if I am triggered, and that doesn't happen that often anymore because of the work over the years, but if I am and I have a contraction or an upset emotionally, I know it's not going to be the 55-year-old version of Keesha that's having that. It's going to be someone quite young. And so then can you hear my dog playing? So then I can go and I can say, so, okay, what's the feeling I'm having? Oh, I feel really sad. And then where do I feel that in my body? And so often with autoimmunity, people leave their bodies behind and they want to do everything up here. And so they're like little brains dragging bodies behind them, which the body has its own consciousness and it will start to yell at you about that. It wants to be a team member with you. It wants to be collaborated with. It wants to be appreciated. And so I'll drop into my body and I'll feel where the sadness sits in there. Maybe it's in my heart, something happened. And so then I'll go, oh, how old does that feeling feel? Oh, that feels about 5 years old. And so then I'll picture my little kid self at 5 years old in that little cell of time where I am with her. And I go, okay, so what do you need right now? And now, see, this is the thing is, and often this is especially if you're women, and women have 80% of the autoimmune illnesses. 80%. Okay. We are diagnosed with 80% of the autoimmune illnesses. And so women often, when they have meanings they've made up that people are never there for them, they have to do everything, they have to caregive everyone in the hopes that maybe someday someone will pay attention to them. Those kinds of dysfunctional behavior strategies don't work. And they often want someone else to read them. And so what you're doing when you do this is you're reading you. You're actually saying, oh, what is it that you need right now? And you, above anyone else in this entire universe, know exactly the words, how to say them, the tone, exactly what kind of body contact you need with that part of you. You're the only one that knows all of that stuff, right? And so then, you'll say, you get to teach that little one something that she or he did not hear at that moment in time. So I was raised by quite a perfectionist mother. On the Enneagram, she's a 1. And so, there was a lot of belief in myself that I could never do anything right, which of course was just sort of cemented in, and that's that abuse at school. And so I had a lot of not good enough and not being worthwhile and not ever, trying my best, trying. And so often what I'm doing when I go back to her is saying, oh, sweetheart, sometimes people are not very skillful in the way they deliver messages, and it's really not about you. And so, you just saying that to your inner child and saying, sometimes, moms and dads are not real skillful. And my parents weren't very skillful for sure. And so, you can say, that's actually not about you. And I'm here with you. And I'm here every time you want to say something. I think you're so important. You're an amazing gift to this world. So you're actually giving that information to that part of you that wants to hear it from others, wants the approval from outside, right? So then what that does is it helps calm down that nervous system and that constant outward seeking, so that then you're integrated and grounded and secure inside this system. Then your nervous system's not so ramped up all the time. When your nervous system's ramped up all the time in a fight, flight, freeze, that whole sympathetic arousal, you have leaky gut because it breaks the cortisol that your adrenals have to continually push out into the system because they're getting the message from your mind that you're not okay, you're in danger. Then that cortisol is going to break down your gut wall, and then food you eat is going to make its way through that gut wall and cause inflammation. It's supposed to. Food's not supposed to get through those little junctions of those cells on the inside of your gut. Your immune system's supposed to read whatever's not you and create an antibody against it. It's actually behaving exactly how it's supposed to. So then you go, okay, so this actually is all starting right here with my perceptions then. It's not to do with anything other than my perception. So then you just keep working on where your perceptions keep putting you as not good enough, not safe, not worthy, not deserving, all of those things. Or you're perceiving your behaviors oh, I don't have time to take care of myself because I'm caring for everyone else. You can start witnessing that behavior and going back to that little one and saying, oh, sweetheart, no, I'm here to take care of you. Right. So if you can't do it for your adult self, you do it for your little child self. And people that have children, I often enlist the faces of their children to put in front of them to get them to center on that. So that's a really good way. And then another way is to go into the so-called future in that cell of time and enlist the aid of your older, wiser self. What would the 98-year-old version of you say to you right now? And you can always ask her advice. And she's a lot sager than you are. It's amazing what happens, what comes out of the consciousness of that being. I'm always amazed at the advice I get. I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. You're right about that, because that one has already lived through so much. He's really, really mellowed and softened and has wisdom and kindness in their smile and in their eyes. And you can actually lean into that and you can bring that forward inside of you. It's all available to you. So that's a really nice way of just being inside your system in this world, just as a beginning. My book, Solving the Autoimmune Puzzle, has a bunch of worksheets and some practices and things like that in it that really get people going on this.
Yeah, these are amazing tools to start, even get out of your way, I would say.
Yes.
The assumption of I am who I am right now, what I'm feeling and thinking right now makes who I am, can be with such practices, I think, really slowly opening space to a lot of healing on different levels. Not just
in that healing trauma through the chakra system program I was telling you about, in every one of the 9 modules, I have this picture. It's a slide that is of this child, a little boy in a grocery store who's just like creating chaos, making all the cans fly off of the shelves and just like chaos everywhere. And I always say, if you were grocery shopping and you came around the corner and you saw that kid, you would go, where is that kid's parent? And so then if you see this mom come whipping around the other aisle and go, Johnny, you would go, oh. But then if you saw the parent say to Johnny, Johnny, don't do that, okay? And then walk away again, and he continued, you'd be like, that's kind of ineffective parenting, right? But if you saw the parent come around the corner, get down on their knees, hold the child by the shoulders and say, Johnny, this is not how you behave in a grocery store. If you do this again, here are your consequences. I'm going to show you how to clean up your mess, and you're going to start putting it all back together now. Let's go. Then you would go, oh, effective parenting. Johnny just got a learning moment, and this is really good. People don't realize that their nervous systems are exactly like Johnny, that we kind of feel like it's a passive video we're watching, where we just have to sort of watch the feelings come and go. We have to watch the perceptions and the beliefs and the behaviors kind of float through. That's not actually true. You can actually get down on your knees in front of your nervous system and go, I don't want you doing this. This is not how you behave. This is how I want you to do it. And you retrain. So, I always say the mind is like a new puppy, where it's always trying to find something to chew on. And with a puppy, you don't spank it and scold it and call it names and kick it out and judge it. You actually go, oh, you've got my favorite slipper, I see. Nope. Take it away and give them, this is what you get to chew on. This is your toy, right? And you can do that with your mind, your perceptions. You actually can go in and see what that little mind is gnawing on. It will always be looking for something to chew on. It's never going to be still. And you can say, no, I don't want you chewing on that. Here's what you chew on. And you can provide it with something quite different. And that takes training and effort. It's not a passive thing. You can actually actively engage with your nervous system.
Oftentimes when I'm talking with people with MS, I'm mainly in communication with people that have MS and are generally autoimmune diseases. And we talk about, the different levels of healing. What's most popular out there, not popular, but like what people are aware of the most is the diet. Change your diet, don't eat this, add this. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about the rest, it's like either it doesn't make sense sometimes to people because it's like it's not logic the way we've been raised and taught. Or I get a lot of response of, oh, I'm already okay with my past. I accepted it, or I'm over this, or I learned to.
Or I've already done a ton of work around it. I hear that all.
Yes.
And what I say is, and yet, right? here you are with all of this still happening. Your high sensitivity C-reactive protein is 30, your ESR is 75, like you have all this inflammatory stuff happening. You can't hold anything in your gut very well without breaking out or having pain. So as long as on the outward, you have all these food sensitivities, I always say a hypervigilant mind makes a hypervigilant immune system, which creates hyperinflammation. And so if you have physical symptoms happening, then you can guarantee that you have this emotional, mental, spiritual piece that's also not in a functional space. And so it's great that you've done a ton of work on it, or you've made peace with it, or blah, 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 blah. That has happened on a mental level, but your body has not gotten the message. And so you're one of those brains dragging a body behind you. And you haven't gotten into a collaborative relationship with this body yet. And so having made peace with something is not the same thing as what I'm talking about. Laying new neuronal tracks down. Another really like flavor of the month, I call it, is vagal nerve stimulation. Everybody's all about vagal nerve stimulation, and I'm just cracking up because I'm like, that's like taking Tylenol for pain. You have to get underneath first why you have the imbalance. Like you have to go through that perceptual process, like change it there, not just put something over the top of it to make it shift, like get underneath not shifting in the first place. So all the vagal nerve stimulation stuff is great, but at the end of the day, it's not going to fix anything. It's another symptom manager like Advil.
Yeah. And a result of the past, even when, we have dealt with some of it, if it's still showing up in your day-to-day behavior and thoughts and what runs you, the operating system that we don't see that runs, then there is more to do. And I'm saying it because I want people to understand that it's possible. Like how you feel today, if you don't feel well, if you, whatever, don't see well, don't talk well, don't walk well, however the MS affected you, there are ways. I mean, you have an amazing story. I have an amazing story. So many people that showed up here or that we know in the community have done this work, and it has results, and it gets to happen together with diet, right? That's how you do it too.
It has to be together with it. It's gotta occur on all 5 of your levels, your healing. So physical is the diet and exercise and sleep and hydration. All of those things are so important. I was a complete sugar addict and I didn't realize it. My genetics, I do genetic testing on 100% of my patients. My genetics show me to be almost celiac, and I was eating gluten. I didn't know, but taking away those physical things only gets you a certain percentage of the way there. You still have 4 other levels of you that all of this is already imprinted in also. So your energetic body, your emotional body, your mental body, and then your spiritual. And so it has to happen on all those levels. You can't just go after the physical, which is where we tend to be kind of centered in our culture.
Yeah. Could you, you already shared some amazing tools and techniques. Could you share with our listeners right now something that can support beginners that have not done any of this work, so they can start taking action right now and, possibly create momentum in their healing journey?
In my book, Solving the Autoimmune Puzzle, I have this worksheet in there, and I'm going to describe it. It's a process of, how I said, Ayurvedic medicine says that autoimmunity is undigested anger. So you're really starting to look at, it's like you're keeping a food diary, but you're keeping a thought diary. And you're starting to just investigate, and you don't have to write anything down if you don't want to, but just notice your thoughts, like start noticing. And I'm always, kind of saying, I'm not really caring so much about the shit, damn, and hells in there, but I'm caring about the places where you are actually cursing yourself, in specific ways. Like, how often are you, I can't, I shouldn't, I want, not good enough, like all of those things. How often are you operating from a motivation of fear? So you can start witnessing your own language inside of your mind. And is it the way that you would speak to a neighbor's child? Is it a way that you would speak to a stranger? Or is it kind of mean? A lot of people are, like I said, autoimmunity is you at war with yourself. And so usually it's very combative. So if you have combative thoughts and yet you want collaboration between your systems, you're not going to get that. So I always say, start there, and really start watching like how you're speaking, really watch your language. And that's a really good exercise. It's super simple. Do it for 24 hours and see what you learn from it.
That's a great tool to raise awareness and start understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Dr. Keesha, I really appreciate your time. I know you have a gift actually for our listeners. Would you like to tell them what you're sharing with them today?
Yes. Do you know what I'm sharing with you, Tyler? What is it?
A webinar.
Okay. We're doing a webinar. All right. Sorry. I do 10 zillion of these and I can never know what my team has arranged. So yes. Are we going to do a webinar on the impact of emotional pain on autoimmunity?
I think so.
Yes. That's the one I love. Okay. So we're going to do a free webinar where I've kind of just touched on the surface and I've mentioned like this program and this book and this worksheet and things like that. I'll go into more depth of the course of an hour. And I love doing this after I do summit interviews because I've talked about some things, but I haven't been able to really delve deeply into them. And I'll do questions and answers. And it's really nice because it's more interactive and you can get a lot more out of it. And so I'm delighted to be able to come and offer that to your viewers.
Very kind of you. And for you listening, the link is going to be in a comment right underneath this video. Dr. Keesha, thank you so much again for investing your time, your energy in us, in the community, in humanity, and keep making such a difference in the world.
Thanks so much. And thanks for this beautiful series so people can really reverse their reality of autoimmunity into something that's not anymore. So thank you.